and welcome to the podcast. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about our conversation today.
This is so exciting. You guys who are listening know a little bit about my story, and I grew up in Maine, and then I moved to Milwaukee, and then we lived in Miami, and we just moved again to Texas. But I just found out that Anne has spent a lot of time in Maine and has family there and went to school there. So it's always I don't know why it's so fun to just connect with people when you feel like you're from somewhere remote.
Yes, yeah, but then there's that thread in common. And you didn't even mention Milwaukee, but most of my family's in Wisconsin. So there
No
you go.
way. So many connections. I love it. Okay, so you have a new book coming out, and we're really excited about it. I would love to kind of start there because I think the subject matter is something that everyone listening is going to resonate with. I think you've written it from a place of personal experience and professional study and like teaching and putting this into practice. So will you just kind of walk us through a little bit about how it was born, how it came to be, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. I wrote the book and it kind of arrived almost like a sentence at a time, literally
Mm.
while I was walking my dog. Like I would take the dog for the walk after getting the kids to school and like sentences would just start bubbling up. But really, I wrote it because I kept seeing the same patterns in my clinical work, in my coaching work, and even had historically seen them in my own life of, women who are trying to do everything right on
Yeah.
paper. They are capable and thoughtful and they're hardworking and they're really devoted to their kids. And they still felt like they were failing all the time, right? They would say things like, I feel guilty when I'm working. I'm restless when I'm with my kids. I don't know what I want. I should be grateful. Why am I so exhausted? Or a lot of times it was like, everything's fine, but I don't feel okay. And I started to develop this name for it and thinking about it as what I called the ambition paradox, right? Because women are told we're allowed to be ambitious, but only if we are also totally available, emotionally regulated, perfectly organized, physically healthy, present, and grateful all the time. And that ambition paradox was the name for that bind, right? Where we're stretching further and further and further until we're invisible in our own lives. And
Yeah.
the goal of the book is to help women actually become a part of their own lives again, right? I think we so often try to solve that problem, that bind, by saying, well, I'll just put more time into work or more time in my kids, and I'll take myself out of the equation. And the
Yeah.
goal of the book is to put you back in the equation, right? And remember that, like, your well-being actually is a way of taking care of your kids.
Yes. Wow. Okay. As you were kind of going through the things that you're hearing from women who are self-described as ambitious, I was just like checking them off in my head. I'm like, yep, me too. Yep, me too. Like I've been through all of that. And it's really taken, I don't even know what the word is. Maybe it's like a deconstruction, but like at the beginning of the pandemic is when it happened for me. And I was running a law practice and had two babies at home. And for the first time ever, I just had this like, why am I even doing all of these things? Like, what's actually important to me? What have I just taken on that society or my family of origin or something says that like I should do, or this is what success, quote unquote, success looks like or should feel like. And that was kind of the start of it for me to be like, why? Like, okay, I can be ambitious, I can be successful, I can be all these different things, but I can't optimize every single area of my life because that's not how optimizing works. If I optimize
Right.
career, then there's something else that I have to let go because I can't do it all. So I really have to figure out what's important to me,
Yeah.
and then start from there. And I wonder if you could speak on that a little bit. Like, I think part of maybe the problem is that we're trying to do all of the things without really slowing down to figure out what are the things that we actually want to be showing up for.
Absolutely. I think that's a huge part of the problem and a major contributing factor is that's what we're taught to do as women,
Yeah.
right? That from the minute we show up on this planet, we are told to minimize ourselves, literally get smaller, shrink, and put everybody's needs above your own. And then I think you add motherhood into that, right? And we
Yeah.
have culturally made motherhood and martyrdom synonyms,
Yes.
right? That the dominant narrative is anything you do for yourself is taking away from your kids. So of course we don't actually know what it is we want underneath that because it's like an atrophied muscle where we're just so not used. It's like the question is even unfamiliar. I mean, I joke with my clients that sometimes it might feel hard to name what you want for dinner, let alone what you want to know, like do with your whole life.
Yeah.
And the other piece is we've been rewarded for that. Like, especially those of us that are high achievers, right? We get that dopamine hit of you're doing a good job, right? I
Yeah.
always joke that like a lot of my clients and myself included were the pleasure to have in class on the report card, right? Because we knew how to follow the rules and do what was needed to be done. And
Yeah.
it's not that achievement is bad or that we were doing anything wrong. It's just that we've gotten such a focus on an external lens of ourselves and our worth that we've
Yeah.
totally lost touch with anything internal. And that there's a process that we have to go through to figure that out. There's a learning curve almost to it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And it is. It's such a slow drip, right? It's like none of us planned to get like we're to that day where we wake up and we're like, oh my gosh, what am I even like? This is not sustainable. I don't feel
Right.
good, but I've worked so hard to get here. It's like all those little micro moments that we've started when we're probably pretty young and we don't even realize it. Okay, so you're referring to a process to kind of, I don't want to say get out of that space, but like to help us start to feel more aligned and live in a way that feels like we're not the martyr all the time, that we can prioritize ourselves and our care. What does that look like? Like for the woman who's listening, who's like, yes, I feel all of this. Where do I even start?
Yeah, yeah. And I outline this, and this is a big part of what I talk about in one of the sections in the book, right? Of like, okay, how do we do this? And I will say this is one of those things that it is far faster for me to say than do,
Okay.
right? Like it is kind of an ongoing piece of work. But the first thing I think we need to do is acknowledge where we are, which is scary,
Mm.
right? I think it can feel like, oh my God, if I even just, I talk about this as pretending, right? Like we're not even acknowledging to ourselves that there's a problem or that we're unhappy. And so we have to start with that and saying, maybe something here isn't working. And I think part of the fear behind that is this thought of like, do I then have to blow up my life and quit my job and change everything and move to a farm? Like maybe if that's really what you want, yeah, but for most of us, that's not actually the solution, right? It's going to be a much smaller series of steps. But kind of once you acknowledge that, I talk about doing a closet clean out for your identity, which sounds like a silly analogy, but if we're cleaning out our closet, and especially if those of you that are listening, maybe that are moms and you've kind of done this postpartum, right? It's like you put everything on the bed and you're like, okay, what actually fits? Because I'm in this new body, literally, figuratively. What actually fits? What's actually comfortable, right? And maybe that sweater that you used to love, you're now thinking is kind of itchy, or you've got this like power suit when you're like that. I don't ever wear that anymore, or those jeans that are too small now. And we get rid of them, right? If you're cleaning out your closet, the point is to make space. And we do the same thing with our identity, or we can, right? And the version of putting everything on the bed is to actually take all the roles that you're playing in your life, wife, mother, sister, daughter, community member, employee, whatever other roles you can think of, and list what are all of the expectations I'm carrying around for each of
Mm.
these. And a lot of times what I find is that list is a million miles long.
Yeah.
And that women keep adding to it. They're like, oh God, this and this and this. And that's kind of a process just to get that list going. But then once you've started working with it, you can go through and name, who did I get that from?
Hmm.
And does it still fit? Right. And so maybe one of the expectations is, I don't know, I'm sure, in law school, right, the dominant expectation was you go get a big law job and that is success.
Yeah.
And do I buy into that? Is that fit for me? Right. Some of it's going to be from our childhood and what our parents said, but like the law example, some of it's going to be more recent in our memory. Some of it's going to be kind of cultural narratives that weren't explicitly told to us, but we kind of gathered along the way.
Yeah.
So then it's like all of that, where did I get it and what fits? Some of those expectations will still fit. You will still buy into them cognitively, emotionally, like they will be aligned for you. But the vast majority is going to be stuff where you're like, that's not actually that important. And yet somehow I'm still judging myself by that standard.
Yeah.
And then what happens is once you put all of that back in your closet, there's a lot more room, right?
Mhm.
Again, if you with your wardrobe, it's like, okay, now I know what I actually need to, what are some of the gaps I need to fill. From an identity standpoint, it's like there's breathing room to say, now what do I actually want? If this is my set of guiding expectations, then I can actually start to do the work of naming what I want which
Yeah.
is another big process. And from there, it is, how do I take steps sustainably to get it, right? And to do it in a way, again, that's not blowing up your life, but is like the 1 degree compass shift that you kind of take those smaller steps to get yourself closer and closer to where you want to be.
Wow, I love this so much. Because even as you were explaining it, I could almost feel like an exhale in my body. I was like, okay, that feels, because a lot of times I think it can feel overwhelming of like, I know that this isn't how I want life to feel, but I don't even know where to start. And that feels like a really practical way to get it out of your head and on paper. I lose you for a
Your
second.
Yeah, your audio cut out for that question and I couldn't hear.
Okay, no worries. I don't think I asked a question, so we'll just edit that out. I was just commenting of how good that feels to be able to get it out of your head and onto paper. Um, okay, I want to go through the other parts of it, like how we can go through and start naming what we actually want and then take steps. But before we jump into that, I want to touch on this performance piece. Because I think a lot of times we haven't we don't even have the awareness that so much of our life is performative because we've just been operating that way forever, probably even from that time where it was like pleasure to have in class, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So can you like talk a little bit about how that tends to show up? What does it feel like? Where do women tend to perform the most, and what's the cost?
I think the biggest, like kind of the closest thing I can get to is fear versus excitement.
Ooh,
So, and I talk about, I have this concept called healthy striving, right? So often we're told like that the solution for women is to be less ambitious, essentially a version of saying want less, right?
yeah,
Lower your standards, want less, then you'll be happy. I've got a lot of problems with that, right? Because it's just another way of saying women need to take up less space and be small and shrink
right.
themselves. And I think a huge goal of mine is to have women actually name their desires and go
Yeah,
after them,
yeah,
right? And take up more space in the world. So instead of saying ambition is the problem, I suggest that it is what we are going after, and that we are often going after things we don't actually want. And that is that
Mhm.
performative element. And so in unhealthy striving, when we're going after something we don't want, it's really often a sense of running away from something, right? It's this fear driven energy of I cannot stop, I cannot rest because I don't want to make a mistake and I don't want to fail. Like
Yeah,
those, right? And I don't want to disappoint people. Those are the things we're running away from. And with that space, right? Of course, your nervous system is on edge the whole time. You're hyper vigilant, right? And it is literally the kind of energetic experience of being chased by something.
yeah,
Whereas when it's something we actually want, when it feels aligned, when it is in that healthy, striving kind of space, it feels more like, I don't know, running down the stairs at Christmas or running after the ice cream truck of like, or even playing a game of tag, like you're running and just enjoying the running a little bit. But
Mhm.
it is this sense of I'm excited about the goal. And because I'm excited about it, I also have permission to make mistakes along the way. I have
Yeah,
permission to rest because I know that I really want that thing and that the rest is okay and might actually make the whole process more sustainable. There's like
yeah,
an enjoyment of the journey too, right? Where like the running is fun, right? And so it is this very different experience of going
yeah.
after something.
Yeah. Oh, that makes it feel real. And I also feel like a couple things. One, it takes a lot of courage, I think, to do that.
Yeah.
Right? It's like choosing your hard kind of thing. And then the other thing that was kind of coming to me through that too is I'm like so many of the women in our audience and myself included, there's almost like a life stage transition happening for so many of us. It's like moving into perimenopause and what comes with all of that. And the kids are not as they're still really reliant. They're younger, but they're doing a lot more things on their own than they used to be able to do.
Yeah.
And there's just this shedding, I think, of like a lot of the things that we're realizing we've been carrying that aren't actually ours. So I feel like it's so timely, I guess, to like have tools to help us navigate this next phase.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you're totally right that like a lot of times in those early, it's not that you can't do it, when you have an infant at home. You could do this
Yeah.
at any point. But
Yes.
what I do find happens is like the first year is kind of survival mode,
Yep.
right? And you're kind of drowning, but you don't even realize it, or you do, but it's a different space. And
Yes.
then your kid gets a little bit older, there's a little more space. And that's when people look up and say, wait a minute. And I
Yes.
think there's also a career element too with that timing of you get the brass ring, right? So
Mhm.
many times people come in because it's like, I've done the thing that I thought was going to be the solution and I'm not actually happy, right? Like I had been telling myself all along, it'll be easier once I get tenure or once I make partner or once I get that promotion or even once the kids get into public school or like whatever it is. It's like
Uh-huh.
I've postponed my joy around this
Yeah.
tangible thing, and I have that tangible thing, and oh shoot, the joy's not there. And
Yeah.
that's the key, right? Where they say, I actually need to really approach this differently.
Yeah. Yeah. That all lands. Okay, so let's talk about this. So we're cleaning the closet of our identity, right? And we're putting everything out there and then picking and choosing what gets to stay, what's still serving us. Once we have it kind of thinned out and we have some space, so maybe, if you guys are listening, you actually do this, like make some time this weekend, sit down for whatever, 20, 30 minutes with a notebook and just start to jot and fill in these different categories and roles you play and how you show up there. How do we start to figure out or put in the things or prioritize or set the boundaries for the things that we actually want? Because I think that's a question a lot of times when I'm speaking with women, that can be really hard to answer, or it feels really loaded, or it's like, I don't even know what I enjoy or what, what I want or what I need or how to ask for it, because that feels like such a distant version of me ever enjoy those things.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that there's a lot of different ways you can go about it, but the thing I like to point out at first is like the joy might be a whisper at first
Mm.
because we've been so tuned against it, right? Like
Yeah.
if you think about, I don't know if you've ever either you're so busy or whatever, and you like forget to eat lunch,
Oh
right? And
yeah.
you get to 4 o'clock, and it's like you were hungry for a little bit around lunchtime. Your body's like, "Hey, it's time to eat," and you're like, "Yeah, I'll do that later." And then by like 2 o'clock, you're not hungry. You're just like going about your day, and then it's like 4 o'clock and you're starving. But a lot of times we're tuning in at the 2 o'clock or
Mm.
3 o'clock hour. You're not starving, you don't know what you want, and you've actually completely tuned out that hunger cue,
Wow.
right? And so we actually have to like get kind of quiet and listen to the little
Mm.
cues of what am I enjoying in a moment. And so I use the term breadcrumbs of joy to it's not a whole slice of bread, it's definitely not a loaf of bread, it's
Yeah.
just a little crumb. Like what are the little things that you notice yourself enjoying? So that's one kind of path. But you can also think back, like what are things I used to enjoy? Can I
Yeah.
try those again and just see how they feel, and know that like we're not joy. I don't mean joy as in like, nirvana and bliss, right? But of just like, oh, this feels good in my body, right?
Yeah.
Um, right. And so it might be something small, right? It might even be around your kids, right? Like I think for me, a big part was like, can I just enjoy like those moments of them giggling and
Yeah.
take it in and be present for
Yeah.
that? And so there's a lot of different ways, but it's really all about like shifting the filter from what is everyone else saying about me to what am I saying about me? Like what
Mm.
feedback am I getting from my body? And it again, it's like an atrophied muscle, right? At first you're gonna like lift a little 1 pound weight, and it's gonna be, what do
Mhm.
I actually want for dinner?
Yeah.
I know my kids want pizza. They want pizza every night. What do I actually want to eat tonight? What would feel good to me? Right. And then you can move up to the 5 pound weight and the 10 pound and beyond of like, bigger picture career.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I'm curious about these breadcrumbs for the people listening, kind of to get the juices flowing. Like, what are some of maybe your breadcrumbs or the breadcrumbs of the women that you work with? Like, what are the little moments we can start to notice that might actually feel really good in our body, that if we're not aware, they might just, be happening, but we're not even noticing or feeling or experiencing them?
Yeah, I mean, I can say for me, like one was this book, right? It was kind of this like little percolating, like I said, sentences, and then it was like, well, what if I write them down? And what if I write like a paragraph or if I were to write a book, what would that look like? Right. And never did I sit down, at least in the first year of conceiving of it, and say, like, I want to write a book. That was not actually how this worked. Right. It was like, oh, I kind of like writing. I used to write all the time. I forgot about that. Oh, right. What would it be like? And kind of playing with the idea and tuning into it. Right. So
Oh, yeah.
that was one version. Um, sometimes I've had a client where it was that version of like, what did I used to like to do? And she'd gotten like really far in her career, but had remembered that she loved like being part of her community service club in high school. Right. I mean, looking
Yeah.
back to literally high school and
Yeah.
with recognition of, oh, like that felt really meaningful to me in a way that my career has not. And what if I tried to do some more service work, and what would that feel like? And, eventually in her case, it did lead to a career change, but it was that like looking backwards to get at things. Or,
Yeah.
I've had clients who have said like, oh yeah, I used to go to yoga classes all the time. Let me just go to one. And it wasn't like I go to one class and I come out like totally with inner peace, but it was, I go to one class and it's just a reminder of like, oh yeah, I'm like, she's in there. That feels
Yes.
right. So it's
Yeah.
both like this conscious experimenting and also just the noticing what is happening if we're not filling that time with noise, essentially.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. A word that was kind of coming to me as you were describing that was this idea of trade-offs, because I feel like,
Mm,
right, there's a reason why we lived life the way we did, whether it was the performance or, trying to do all the, like there was a cost to that, but there was also a benefit.
yeah.
And then going through this process and getting more clear on the things that we actually want and need and enjoy. There's also a trade-off there, right? Because that requires us to say no to some things. It might
Mm,
require us to disappoint some people, or, like the things that feel really like in our body, even though we know they're actually really good for us.
yeah.
So can you speak to that a little bit? Like things that are coming to mind: perfectionism, people pleasing, the things that we're kind of aware of, but maybe not seeing how they fit into the micro when we make identity changes like this.
Yeah. And it's funny that you said perfectionism and people pleasing, right? That and then pretending is what I talk about as the three P's, like driving this whole bus, if you will, right?
Okay.
Of like, these are the patterns underneath all of it. And the very first thing I like to say about all of them is that, again, I want to acknowledge the cultural conditioning, right? I think a lot of times when we struggle with perfectionism or people pleasing, it's a little bit of like, well, it's a me problem, something I'm doing wrong, as opposed to women are literally punished more for their mistakes, right? Like we actually do have to perform better than men for the same outcome from a workplace perspective, right? And certainly with people pleasing, as we already talked about, right? Like that is indoctrinated as part of womanhood, right?
Yeah.
Is to please other people.
Yeah.
And so part of why this is so hard is we have to get deeper,
Yeah.
right? In terms of really addressing those things. And it's very scary to disappoint people, to let yourself make a mistake, to stop at 95% done, right? As opposed to saying like, I need to do that extra.
Yeah.
But what happens is when we start consciously working on them, again,
Yeah.
from that nervous system perspective, we can help train ourselves to acknowledge like, oh, it's safe. Like
Yeah.
I can do something, God forbid, even 80%. And that actually might be just great for that particular situation. Right. And this isn't about lowering your standards, but it's about carefully choosing what deserves my energy for excellence,
Yep.
what needs kind of solid energy, what needs good enough energy, what needs passable. Like there are things in your life that can be passable, and then what doesn't deserve your energy at all.
Yeah.
And I think similarly with the people pleasing dynamic of like, you know, I think sometimes people say just set boundaries as if that's the easiest thing in the world. And I think it's a little more complicated than that, right? Sometimes there are people in our lives where it's going to be really hard to set a boundary with them, especially at work, right? It might be that like you can't just say, I'm not going to work after 5 o'clock, right? There are a lot of jobs where that's not going to fly,
Yeah.
but we can figure out little ways that disappointing people is safe or that we
Yeah.
can set a limit. We can kind of practice disappointing people, safer people maybe at first, and recognize like I don't die, right? I think with people pleasing, it's this recognition that like I am responsible for what I do, and other people get to have their feelings about that. And it might be really uncomfortable,
Yep.
but I can tolerate it.
That's the whole thing right there, I think. Like even here on the show, it's called high capacity. And the idea is not that we become more productive, but the
Yeah.
idea is that we have the capacity, the emotional resilience, right? The space in our nervous system to handle the discomfort that those types of things require without us just like being sent into a stress response or
Right.
freezing or being so overwhelmed by it all, right? That's that to me, that's the concept of high capacity.
Yeah.
And can you speak to a little bit like really practically what that looks like? Because I hear you kind of talking about like we don't take it from 0 to 100 and we don't just tell our nervous system that these things are safe, right? It's like a show me system. We have to actually experience it. And our body's like, okay, cool, we didn't die. Like maybe we can do something a little bit more scary next time. Could you just speak to that?
Yeah, it's like what are the baby steps, and like with disappointing people, right? And people pleasing, maybe to go back to the dinner analogy, it's like, okay, my kids want pizza, I want, I don't know, tacos, like whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? And I serve the thing I want. And maybe
Mm.
one kid has, depending on your age of your kids, has a tantrum, or the
Yep.
teenager is like, "Mom, that's disgusting," or like whatever the reactions are, and it's kind of like, okay, they can have feelings about this, and
Yeah.
I still put nutritious food on the table, and I'm enjoying it, and that is okay.
That's right.
Right? Like I'm not dying, right? Or maybe it's at work, you push back just a little bit where someone's like, I really need this by 3 o'clock. And you're like, oh God. And in your head, you're like, I can't
No way.
do everything that's being asked of me. And so the pushback is either, I can get it to you by 4, or if I sure I can prioritize this, but then that means this other thing has to wait. Is that okay with you? Right.
Yeah.
And recognizing again that like your boss can handle it and you can handle it, and it's going to feel uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but that sense of discomfort is not so much that you're going to die from it, or that you can't get through it to the other side if you
Yeah.
kind of ride it like a wave.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Okay, let's talk about the book a little bit because I want everyone to hear. This is like, I feel like this was written like this should be a textbook for everyone listening because this is the experience, right, that I hear over and over. Tell us a little bit about the bonuses that are available with pre-order. Tell us all the things.
Yeah. Well, I see. I think that I'm really excited about the book. It was a challenge to me, as you can even see how we're talking about it, right? That some of this is like deep,
Yeah.
individual, nuanced work. And a huge part of my, if we think about ambition, one of the things I'm really ambitious for at this point in my career is impact, right? And I can only meet one on one and even in groups with so many people, but I still want this work and this messaging to get out into the world. So the book is kind of a version of doing that. And, I've gotten the feedback, and it was my goal that it feels very actionable.
Okay.
So it, talks through how did working motherhood even, like how did we get here? Like, why has it become so hard? Right. And the ways in which motherhood in particular has really escalated in the past. And then it talks about what I call the motherhood advantage, and the really challenges this myth that work and motherhood are opposing forces, and that there's
Mhm.
actually a lot of strength in the overlap. And then it talks you through exactly the skills we just discussed in terms of the healthy, striving shift that we want to make. And then there's also a section at the end on workplaces and partners and how they can actually help make this whole thing better too, right? Like the systemic layer.
Yeah.
But the pre-order bonuses, so if people order the book before it comes out on March 6th, I'm also really excited about. There is an ebook called A Day in Her Life. And I got to interview a handful of amazing moms with really widely varying careers, right? A
Okay.
friend that's a cardiologist, and a friend that is an elementary school music teacher, and someone that is a coach, and someone that owns her own staffing company, and an academic. And so lots of different careers, lots of different types of families and ages of kids. And they all talk through, here's literally what my day looks like as
Mm.
a ambitious working mom, right? And defining ambition in lots of ways. And so you get to see this is not one size fits all. There's a
Yeah.
lot of ways of doing this quote right. And then at the end of that, there's some worksheets of like taking all of that information and thinking about, well, what does that inspire in me to make as a change here? So there's that. There's some scripts for hard conversations, like how to address the mental load with your partner, right? And
Okay.
things like that. And then there's also some guided meditations around, really short ones designed for like managing your nervous system in 2 to 3 minutes, right? And one thinking we talked about boundaries. One is around kind of calming your nervous system before you set a boundary and challenging that people pleasing dynamic. So lots of like just really useful tools in the pre-order bonuses.
Oh my goodness, that's perfect. I know that those are the kinds of things that our audience is really wanting to experience and the resources they have. So that's great. Okay, so it comes out August 6th, you said the book does.
Yes.
And it's available, I'm assuming, wherever books are
Available
sold.
now wherever everywhere anywhere that books are sold, and including Audible. So if you're a listener rather than a reader, which I know I am for nonfiction books, I love to multitask while I walk my dog. So yeah, you can get it that way too. And then to get the pre-order bonuses, that's just available on my website at drannwalsh.com.
Okay, awesome. We will link that for you guys listening so it's easy to find. But pick it up. I think this will help you, one, feel less alone and like you're the one who can't figure out the solution to this problem because, right, as Anne has shared, like this is systemic. This is something that we've been conditioned for and around, I think, for longer than we have. So let that bring you some self-compassion. And then also really practical ways to start, I think, just re-exploring like, who am I and what do I want and what lights me up and what am I here for and what's important to me. I saw a quote actually this morning and I don't know who said it and I'm probably going to butcher it, but the idea was like, I want to live a life where I'm excited to go to work and then I'm excited to come home. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that feels so good. Like that would feel so good for so many of us. And I think these are really practical ways to start to put that, make it a reality for us. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for writing it, even though it came to you in these fun little breadcrumbs and sentences, for compiling all of your work and experience and making the time to share your wisdom with us here on the show today. It's been such a pleasure.
It was delightful. Thank you again for having me.